first meeting with Prime Minister Modi started with a disagreement.
Yes, it did.
The book describes Dr. Manmohan Singh to be non-existent in phases.
I would say that he was a great expert, but I won't call him a great leader, which I would call Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi may not be that great an expert, but he's a great leader. You know, ministers don't speak. I mean, in the meetings, I used to say, everyone used to say yes. The only ministers who spoke were Arun, Jaitley and Nitin Gadkari. I distinctly remember I was sitting at the Red Fort on 15th August and Mr. Modi was speaking out. Many of the statements that we made was factually incorrect. So I sent an SMS to Mr. Nabeel. I said, this is factually incorrect.
Okay.
Nothing happened.
First meeting with Prime Minister Modi started with a disagreement.
Yes, it did.
And not many people disagree openly or directly with the Prime Minister. And in fact, in your upcoming book that deals with your encounters with varied Prime Ministers and politicians, you talk about how an official in the Prime Minister's office was actually aghast that you had dared to disagree with Prime Minister Modi. Can we start there?
Yes, you can. You know, I had got into a bad habit of speaking my mind out. And it was too late in the day. I had put in about 33 years as an IAS officer when I became Coal Secretary. And I couldn't hold myself. I didn't want to hold myself. I had always been of the view that speak your mind out. Because whoever is the minister or the Prime Minister will stand to benefit from your view. He may disagree. Ultimately, he's the decision maker. But I had always believed, don't deprive him of your view. If you have a view and there is a reasoned view, come up with that. I said that. And when this occasion arose in my first meeting with the Prime Minister, I had just taken over as Coal Secretary and there was a meeting organized at the residence of the Prime Minister where there weren't very many people. The first presentation was made by the Power Secretary. And the 6 slides that he showed, in all those slides, he mentioned that the power problem was on account of coal. So then the Prime Minister turned towards me, Anil ji, आपने देखा? पावर की समस्याएं कोल की वजह से हैं. आप कोल सेक्टर को ठीक कर दीजिए, देश की आर्थिक स्थिति सुधर जाएगी. आई रिमेंबर हिज वर्ड्स. सो आई सेड, सर मैं आपसे सहमत हूं, आप सही कह रहे हैं, कोल में गंभीर समस्या है, लेकिन कदाचित ये उचित नहीं होगा कहना कि समस्त पावर की समस्याएं कोल की वजह से हैं. हमें शायद कोल के सेक्टर को, पावर के सेक्टर को कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली देखना होगा. उन्होंने कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव शब्द पकड़ लिया और इमीडिएटली मुझसे एग्री कर गए. बोले हाँ अनिल जी सही कह रहे हैं. एंड देन ही टर्न टुवर्ड्स मिस्टर पीयूष गोयल, हु इज द पावर एंड कोल मिनिस्टर. ही सेड, अनिल जी सही कह रहे हैं, हमें इसे कॉम्प्रिहेंसिवली देखना होगा. एंड द मीटिंग एंडेड देयर.
एंड आफ्टर दैट मीटिंग इट वाज सेड टू यू कि भाई आपने ये कैसे बोल दिया?
It was not said on that occasion, it was much later.
Another disagreement over health insurance.
Yes, that was my last meeting with the PM. You know, that's why I say that in my first meeting I had a disagreement with him. He agreed with me.
That was an amiable disagreement. In the second meeting, you argued over health insurance and he wasn't that happy.
No, what had happened was, for 3 years, the government had been trying to come up with a replacement for Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, which was perceived to be a health insurance scheme of the previous government. So after struggling for 3 years...
Which you had actually birthed.
Yeah, long ago, 2008. Yes. So the principal secretary to Prime Minister rang me up. He said, Anil, आज शाम को Prime Minister से हम लोग health insurance discuss कर रहे हैं. तुम आके जरा brief कर दो. तो I was a bit surprised because I was then holding the charge of Secretary School Education. तो मैंने कहा, साहब मैं तो स्कूल देख रहा हूँ, मेरा क्या... बोले नहीं हम लोग पिछले 3 साल से कोशिश कर रहे हैं और समझा नहीं पा रहे हैं हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस को, और प्राइम मिनिस्टर थोड़ा नाराज हुआ था इंश्योरेंस का नाम सुन के, तो देखो अगर तुम बता सको उनको. तो मैंने कहा, साहब मेरी डांट पड़वाएंगे? तो हंसने लगे, बोले नहीं तुम आओ. तब मैंने कहा कि साहब मेरा लोकल स्टैंड है क्या है? बोले ऐसा करते हैं कि आज हेल्थ का है रिव्यू, हम एजुकेशन का भी रख देते हैं और तुम्हें बुलाया जाएगा, अगर तुमसे पूछते हैं प्राइम मिनिस्टर तो बता देना. हमने कहा ठीक. शाम को हम लोग पहुंचे करीब 7 बजे करीब, अगेन एट हिज रेजिडेंस. हम लोग 7-8 लोग थे, इंक्लूडिंग द देन फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर मिस्टर अरुण जेटली. The health secretary was there. She made a presentation on health insurance again. And after the presentation, the Prime Minister didn't look very happy. And then he turns towards me, Anil, आप रहे हैं हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस पर, आपने देखा, आपकी क्या राय है? और मेरी राय एग्जैक्टली वही थी जो हेल्थ सेक्रेटरी ने कही थी. तो मैंने उनको समझाया, 15 मिनट में बोला, और एक टक मुझे सुनते रहे. General impression about the PM is that he speaks a lot. In meetings he doesn't, and he's a very patient listener. He didn't interrupt me. I spoke for 15 minutes, and I said exactly the same thing that the health secretary had said. Of course, I gave him a very solid reason why insurance should be. He listened to me. At the end of it, he said, "Anil ji, aap sahi keh rahe hain." That day, Ayushman Bharat was born. Of course, it was christened later on, but that day. So when I was coming out of the room, one of the joint secretaries of the PMO who was present in the meeting, he asked me, "Sir, आपको तो पता था नाराज हो जाते हैं हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस का नाम सुन के, इंश्योरेंस का नाम, आपने फिर भी वही बात कह दी." मैंने कहा, देखो यार, मुझे ना उनसे आज कुछ लेना है, न रिटायरमेंट के बाद कुछ लेना है. जो मैंने उचित समझा उनको बता दिया, नहीं समझ में आता कोई बात नहीं. As I said, this was of course the last year of my career. It was in March and I retired in June.
Yeah.
But much before that, it's a question of habit that you develop and you can't change it.
You're outspoken and you can't help that.
You can use that word outspoken. I said
or
what
you just speak your mind.
Yes.
Now, your book chronicles your encounters with different politicians. Among them, two prime ministers. I would like to talk a little bit more about than the others because you actually worked with them. Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Manmohan Singh.
I didn't work with them.
Well, not with them, but you had a chance to work in the government at a high level when they were Prime Minister.
Yes.
Let me phrase myself accurately. आपने मोदी साहब के साथ जो 2 encounters हुए, आपने बताया उनके बारे में. You can see Prime Minister Modi in shades of grey. You can see his plus points, and you also speak about how demonetization in some ways was a turning point in your perception of him.
Yes, I had a great time when I was Coal Secretary with the Prime Minister. In fact, he recognized me in front of 100 secretaries. He used to host this quarterly tea with secretaries. And in one of them, he mentioned my name. He said, "Dekhiye Anil ji ne kitna badhiya kaam kiya coal block auction mein." He was very fond of me. And I distinctly recall he is very impressed with the technology that I was using for coal block auction. Ours was one of the very few offices that had gone totally digital. So we didn't have paper or files in coal ministry. He was very attracted to it. And then he used to keep asking me about aur kya kar raha hai technology mein. So I had a great relationship with him. But I mean, that's my perception of him. Something went wrong after demonetization. I can't put my finger what went wrong. Because, I found him losing his cool. He used to get very angry on occasions.
After demonetization. You're saying before demonetization, he was a much calmer leader.
Much calmer, much more decisive. We used to joke. I remember we were sitting in a meeting till about 8:30 in the evening. And then he had his iPad or whatever pad in front of him.
And he's quite a tech buff.
He's a tech buff. And he said, "अरे बड़ा लेट हो गया अपनी घड़ी की तरफ, आप लोगों को तो घर जाना होगा, मुझे क्या है, मैं तो घर जाऊंगा तो मैं इसी के साथ खेलूंगा." These are the terms that he used. He put everyone at ease.
Yeah.
So everyone came out. Post-demonetization, I don't know what happened. I'm just putting post-demonetization because that's where I saw the change. He became tentative, he became aggressive. I think he became insecure as well. And all this was
I mean, he's electorally powerful. His popularity ratings I remain high.
As I said, I can't put my finger on it, but this is what I observed. And another thing which I noted was Mr. Arun Jaitley played a very important role in making him what he was. He was a troubleshooter. He was the man who was solving problems for him.
He also had friends across.
Absolutely. Mr. Arun Jaitley reminded me of whatever little I saw of Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee.
Consensus builder.
He's a consensus builder. I walked away with all the credit for coal block auction. I think a lot of credit goes to Arun Jaitley. Now, he was not my minister. Here was a guy who was interacting with people like Naveen Patnaik, Mamata Banerjee, opposition chief ministers, bringing them on board. I've written in my books that this is what is required. We can't have a war with the state governments. We have to get them along. Arun Jaitley did that.
So you believe that post-demonetization and post-Arun Jaitley, something changed in Prime Minister Modi?
I would believe that because he had such a calming influence on him. And he was one of the very few guys who could openly disagree with him or give him advice. For example, I was in favor of commercial auction of coal mines. Right? My minister wasn't. He said, "Kuch bawal ho jayega." I said, "Sir, dekhenge bawal kya hoga." So I remember in a informal discussion, PM, Arun Jaitley, Mr. Piyush Goyal and myself. And Arun Jaitley comes up with this. He asked me, in a discussion, it came about commercial mining. Arun Jaitley says, कि सर ये अनिल जी सही कह रहे हैं कि अभी करा लीजिए, चुनाव के आसपास इसको नहीं करा पाएंगे. एंड प्राइम मिनिस्टर agreed with me, agreed with Arun Jaitley. But that file never moved. The file was sitting with the minister. It moved after 5 years. So imagine if this commercial mining had happened earlier. So Arun Jaitley played a very, very important role.
So you have been impressed with the Prime Minister in his decisiveness, in his ability to listen, but you feel that something changed.
Let me explain this to you. It's difficult to find such a decisive leader. Because as you were mentioning, though I'd never worked with Manmohan Singh, I could perceive the indecision at that level.
The book describes Dr. Manmohan Singh to be non-existent in phases.
Yes.
Not existent.
I used to...
What do you mean by that? Do you mean his leadership was not existent?
No, he was as a person. He was a low-profile person. I'm not saying it's good, bad or ugly, but a prime minister has to be present. He has to be visible. May not be as visible as some others are, but you have to be there. You have to be a great communicator. You may be an expert, but if you are unable to convey to your team your intention, what you want to do, it has to be very visible. Some people don't realize it. You can be a quiet expert. You can be a quiet finance minister, but you can't be a quiet prime minister. You have to engage with people. You have to motivate people. I mean, it's not that there was anything wrong with him. That was his temperament. That is what he was. I would say that he was a great expert, but I won't call him a great leader, which I would call Mr. Modi. Mr. Modi may not be that great an expert, but he's a great leader. He motivates people. He takes people along. He's decisive. He's perceptive. So was Mr. Manmohan Singh. He's very perceptive, but he couldn't push things. Even if he wanted to push things, he was not a pusher. Test Modi on that. If he likes an idea, he'll push it and take it to the logical conclusion.
One of the things you've also said is that who a leader surrounds them, him or herself with, will impact the kind of leader that they will be. And you have spoken about an over-centralized wielding of power in which not enough people post Arun Jaitley are speaking their mind to the Prime Minister in the Prime Minister's office.
I think if I have to put my finger on one thing, this is it. I mean, you have a very centralized governance system and PMO determines almost everything. And I can say that with my experience in 4 years as Secretary Government of India. Even trivial things used to be referred to PMO.
Choti si baat?
You had interviewed me some time ago on CBSE paper leak.
Yes.
For holding that press conference, Minister said we should speak to the PMO. I told him, sir, iski kya zarurat hai? Nahi, baat kar lete. I was surprised. I said, why should a minister ask the PMO for holding a press conference? I'm just giving you one example. That is, that's what it was. For every issue, you go to the PMO. I used to wonder, why can't it be? I mean, if it's a national issue, important issue, there is one CBSE. CBSE is one organization in education ministry, impacting not even 2% of the students in the country. And you're going to PMO for a press conference? So we went there. So too much centralization. Now, if you have so much centralization, you must have that wherewithal sitting in the PMO. First, too much centralization is not good. It should be decentralized. But let us say, for argument's sake, that yes, it is okay. Then you should have that core sitting there who are able to take quick decision, tell you. In this particular case, I got a response immediately from the PMO. But in so many other cases, look at the vacancies that exist at directors level and PSUs. मैं तो लड़ता था कोल इंडिया के लिए, but सब लड़ते नहीं हैं. तो क्या है? So many vacancies. Why? Because everything is sitting there.
So if you had to identify the problem, is it over-centralization or is it that bureaucrats around him or ministers around him don't speak plainly enough, don't speak bluntly enough?
Both. Because if you have decentralized existence, then you can live with such civil servants who are not outspoken. But if you have over-centralization, then if you don't have such people sitting there, you are in trouble.
But many of these civil servants are your friends, your colleagues, your juniors. Do they ever talk about?
No one has the courage to talk about it. Who talks about it? No one talks about it. Informally, they say. Informally, they say. Everyone confesses to this informally that there's too much centralization. No one speak it out in the open. But there is indeed. Everyone says that.
This has happened in India before. Indira Gandhi's Prime Minister's office was, at least what one reads, was exactly like this.
Yes. And look at the consequences. So,
But the flip side is Dr. Manmohan Singh's Prime Minister's
It was the other extreme. So, you have two extremes.
Yes.
You had somebody sitting there And with so many power centers, almost every minister was going haywire. And the PMO had no clue what's going on. No clue.
In Manmohan Singh.
In Manmohan Singh. Now everything's centralized. I mean, we have to have something in between. You have to give this power to the ministers to do what they... Ministers don't speak. I mean, in the meetings, I used to say, everyone used to say yes. The only ministers who spoke were Arun Jaitley and Nitin Gadkari. Nitin Gadkari also was very outspoken. He spoke his mind.
So these are the only two ministers you have witnessed speaking, being themselves.
Being themselves.
And Baki?
Baki कोई नहीं बोलता था. बाहर खूब बोलते थे कई. अंदर चुप. Which is very unfortunate. You know, in informal chats with some of them, I used to tell, sir, बताइए क्या है? But it is in his own interest. You know, I feel sad about it because here is a leader who can actually deliver. You know, I must give it to Mr. Modi. He is capable of delivering. So he should get that feedback, whether he likes it or not. You know, I remember I used to have ongoing battle with the PMO because I had worked earlier with Mr. Nipendra Mishra. And I used to tell him, sir, बताते क्यों नहीं इनको? I used to tell him, sir, ये गलत कह रहे हैं Prime Minister. I distinctly remember I was sitting at the Red Fort on 15th August and Mr. Modi was speaking out. Many of the statements that we made was factually incorrect. So I sent an SMS to Mr. Nipendra Mishra. I said, this is factually incorrect. Nothing happened. You know, I told him, Prime Minister is announcing that the NDA government has set up the project monitoring group. I said I was the first chairman of the project monitoring group in UPA.
Are you saying Prime Minister Modi has been let down by his bureaucrats?
You know, that would be too far-reaching a statement. He has a choice to select his civil servants. I mean, who decides who are going to be around him? But I do feel whoever is around him should have the courage to tell him. I mean, courage in the sense that he will benefit from him. So, for example, if the Prime Minister makes a factually incorrect, you know, you can have a view, you can make a political statement, I have nothing to say. But he is making a factually incorrect statement. It is the job of the civil servant around him to tell him, sir, ye galat. Uske baad he may still decide to speak the wrong thing. My view is, you know, you can't expect the Prime Minister to be correct on all the facts. There will be occasions when he will be wrong. Someone has the courage, should have the courage. The fact that he is repeatedly making those statements means that no one is telling him. If someone were to tell him, he'll work out a system and have a filtering process so that he gets only which are factually correct.
Let's speak about the predecessor to Prime Minister Modi, Manmohan Singh. You've said that was the other extreme.
Yes.
But as I said, your book is a bit, I wouldn't use the word scathing. There's respect for Dr. Singh's expertise and experience, but somehow a big disappointment with him as a leader.
You know, because he was not a leader. I mean, he did not have those leadership traits. He was a great man. He was a very fine gentleman. He was an expert, but certainly not a leader. Let us accept that as a fact. Once you give him that, then he was in the wrong position there. Why? Because Prime Minister has to be, as I keep saying, visible. Look at the other aspect of it. You know, I'm still unable to come to grips with what Manmohan Singh did in the so-called coal scam. He said that I was wrongly briefed. And Mr. Harish Gupta faced the flak.
The former Coal Secretary.
Yes, how can you...
Just for context for our audience, the former Coal Secretary was said to be by his colleagues one of the most honest, upright bureaucrats. And then he was implicated in the coal scam that you have argued was not a scam at all.
See, what had happened was, I'm not going into the details of it because it will take another hour to do that. But when the file goes to a PMO, then it is examined at length. Now, Prime Minister can't wash away and say that I was misled. No, if he was misled, so was Mr. Harish Gupta. You know, my take is none of them is responsible. I mean, Secretary to Government of India cannot be held responsible for a wrong document placed on a file. He's not supposed to look at it. I've been in that position. Even I can be hauled up for a document because I can't send every document to a Thana for verification. Even that will not work. So Harish Gupta Sahab was not at fault. Now, let's take for argument he was at fault, right? Then the entire committee was at fault. So was the coal minister or stroke the Prime Minister who signed the file. I was a bit surprised because I still rate Dr. Manmohan Singh as one of the most honest politicians that we've had in the country. I don't know why he did that. Again, some wrong advice. A leader will never do that. A leader will stand by his team and try and defend the team.
So you're saying Manmohan Singh abandoned, in a way, his officials during the allegations of the coal scam.
Absolutely.
And washed his hands off something and therefore was a poor leader in that moment.
Not only on that count, you know, there are, I mean, if you think of a leader, he has to have certain traits. He should be able to motivate people around him. And that can happen through communication. Now, he was a great expert, as I keep saying, he's a fine person, but not a great motivator.
You are not a fan of Mr. Vinod Rai, who not just sort of put the 2G and the telecom licenses on the national headlines, but also the coal scam that you have since long argued was not a scam. You have also said Vinod Rai should apologize to India and to his colleagues.
I have not said that he should apologize.
Something like that.
I have said that he knows why he did what he did, because he didn't act like a CAG. He actually acted like an accountant. He writes a book, not just an accountant, but I think he acted like an accountant. Why? Because a CAG will go into evaluating each of the mines and come to conclusions. You can't have generalities. You can't have this is the cost of mining, because cost of mining varies from 300 rupees per ton to 3,000 rupees per ton, depending on where the coal is. And you can't say this is the average cost of mining and thereby this is the return, and you say this is what is the notional loss. It doesn't work that way. He did that. More importantly, I think, after having committed that wrong, I don't think he did it consciously, but whatever may have been the reason, he goes to the media, or his team goes to the media and announces in the media. The job of a CAG is to submit the report to the parliament, not go to town with it, not go to media with it. That created an atmosphere which I suffered. When I was Coal Secretary, no officer wanted to commit himself on the file. We did coal block auction. In some of the files, the initial recommendation was by the Secretary Government of India. It has never happened earlier.
So you're saying there was an environment where no bureaucrat wanted to put his or her name on the file?
Absolutely.
So governance and decision making
suffered. It suffered.
Why do you think Vinod Rai did what he did?
I don't know. He will have to answer that question. I'm surprised, because he was known to be an honest, efficient officer. Why he did what he did, only he can answer. I can't say.
How would you describe, looking back with the benefit of hindsight? Because at that time, there was this sense of the Manmohan Singh government being under siege, one scam after another. Now, many years pass, these cases go to court. They're not able to stand, as it were, in court. Everybody agrees that Mr. Gupta, as the former Coal Secretary in particular, was treated unfairly. When you look back at Vinod Rai, like if you met Vinod Rai just now, what would you say to him about that time?
I will ask him this question that you have asked me. Why did you do what you do? I'll ask him.
Who do you think he let down?
Everybody. He let down the entire bureaucracy. Forget anything else. I have seen personally the consequences of what he did. Not many people know that, because I was right there. After the devastation that he caused, I was in that ministry. It was like walking into a graveyard. CBI after officers, after files. It was a shocker, absolutely. Yes, there were wrongs committed.
I was just going to say that there were, let's not pretend that everything was hunky-dory, that there wasn't policy manipulation, that there wasn't corruption.
There was corruption, there were wrongs done. But he should have gone into the details of identifying what was wrong, not coming in with general statements. So this mine could have been wrongly allocated. This mine could have been wrongly allocated. Fix the responsibility of why it was done. It can't be across the board. Look at what happens thereafter. Mr. Rai says after 2004 all mines should be cancelled. Supreme Court goes to 90s and does it. I mean, how do you do that? So it caused so much devastation because the environment that it got created. That is why, there are so many CAG reports. Even now you have CAG reports. They'll keep coming. It's a question of how they are positioned. It's the positioning that was very
And how do you think he positioned it?
He went to town.
So you think he did it for publicity?
He shouldn't have. That only he knows. I don't want to comment on my impression. Only he knows why he did it.
The consequence was
devastating.
Because decision-making stopped.
Yes. And I have said that.
And that's obviously not the case today. You have a very decisive leader.
Absolutely. In any case, during that time, many decisions were not being taken.
Right.
And you have another CAG report. That's why the PFG was set up. I was asked by the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister that you fast-track decisions, at a time when all scams were breaking out. I was called and I was asked to join the Cabinet Secretariat, head the project monitoring group to fast-track projects at a time when scams were breaking out.
And then?
And then it happened. We managed to demonstrate that you can clear projects despite all that. We facilitated clearance of 5 lakh crores worth of projects in 15 months.
They say a bureaucrat can only be as good or bad as the leader that they're working with. Now, you have worked with many, when I say with, I mean sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, many chief ministers as well. Let me start with the Chief Minister you seem to have had the maximum run-ins with, or the maximum negative impressions on of, is Mayawati, the BSP leader. Talk about that time. Talk about that time, because not everybody has yet read your book. They will read the book, but I have had the occasion to read the book, so I want you to talk about it.
Not very pleasant memories.
Yes. What is the abiding memory of working with Mayawati when she was Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh?
Undercurrent of corrupt practices.
How does that make her regime different from other regimes that would have also had corruption?
The levels that I saw shocked me. The levels at which decisions were happening. So I was her special secretary. So one of my jobs was also in one of the weeks I used to be the day officer. And I had the occasion to see a few things, and it wasn't a good experience. It was sad. I mean, imagine a district magistrate with a briefcase walking into the room and leaving the briefcase behind. And when he comes out, I asked him, what did you bring in the briefcase? He said, files laya tha. हमने कहा, DM तो कोई file लाता नहीं Chief Minister के पास. So it was writ large on his face. I said, you are demonstrating to her that all of us can do something which we shouldn't be doing it. And then the expectation will be from others. So in my book, since you mentioned it, Encounters Politician, I don't blame the politicians. I don't blame the politicians because they would be what they are in the context in which they're working. But it is not for the civil servants to do what they are doing. Because I'm a part of that family and I feel sad. You ask this question that civil servants are determined by the environment.
You don't agree.
I don't agree.
They say the honest Babu gets transferred.
So be it, you do something else. For the IAS, every job is important. Every job is important. Why are you bothered? Transfer is an excuse that many of us use to hide our inefficiency. I keep saying, don't treat politician as a villain, which I discovered after 10 years in my career. I used to treat them as villains. Later on, I realized he has his own compulsions. He has his own limitations. Then I understood the difference between compromise and accommodation. And you should not compromise on anything illegal. But accommodation is important.
Supporters of the BSP leader, Mayawati, say that she is judged more harshly than other leaders who do the same. They imply a certain kind of casteist bias, a certain kind of caricaturing of her as a leader. That when I remember this used to happen in the media when her birthday was celebrated, when an iconography was created around her in those parks and so on that came up in Uttar Pradesh. There was a lot of criticism, but the same criticism, it was said then, was not applied to other leaders.
I'm not talking about people who I have not worked with. Let me compare Mayawati with, say, Kalyan Singh.
Yeah.
Both I worked with. I was in her secretariat, I was in his secretariat. And I can't say what others did, they may have been corruption. I saw one of the most honest politicians in Kalyan Singh. And thereafter I joined Mayawati. So for me, it was chalk and cheese.
I'll come to Kalyan Singh, but when you say what you carry from the Mayawati years for you is brazen corruption in that government, is that what you're saying?
I didn't see corrupt practices per se, but I saw things which may have been corrupt. So for example, I'll give you another example, which I've narrated in my book. I'm again an officer on duty in the morning. She calls me in, she's trying to read a file. So she asked me, ये क्या है? तो I told her, हो सकता है. मैंने कहा, मैडम ये तो नियम के विरुद्ध नहीं हो सकता. अच्छा ठीक है. Matter got over, I came and sat outside. An officer, couple of years senior to me, also in the secretariat, walks in later on, goes inside, and then she comes along with that officer. अरे तुम तो कह रहे तो नहीं हो सकता, ये तो कह रहे हो सकता है.
No, so she used another officer to undercut you.
So this never happened with Kalyan Singh. We told him this is incorrect. It was not done. No, there are two extremes. I mean, there could be the chief ministers in between, more corrupt, less corrupt. For them, it would be hearsay for me. I am talking about what I personally sources suffered. So I saw these two persons, and that's why maybe I'm more biased against Mayawati, because I had seen Kalyan Singh earlier, totally an epitome of honesty. And here I saw a person who could do anything.
Why? And indeed, in the same book, your admiration for Kalyan Singh does come through. What made him different from other politicians you've encountered?
It was difficult to visualize that you can have a politician like him, And I narrate incidents why I come to what I say. I remember I got a call from a batchmate of mine who was chief development officer in his home district. And he says कि इनके लड़के ने CDO एक गाड़ी ले ली है CDO की. So I was accompanying Mr. Kalyan Singh to an event. In those days we didn't have mobile phones, no? So I mentioned to him कि आपके साहबजादे ने वो गाड़ी ले ली है CDO की. So he stopped. He said घर चलिए आप. He went back home. Ghar se he spoke to somebody, very angry. He was talking to them. I was sitting outside. And then he came out. By the evening, the vehicle had been returned. This is one of the many examples that I saw. Like in transfers and posting, it used to be a racket of doctors in UP. He set it right. He did not allow it to happen. So what I saw of him, people say he changed later on, I don't know. Whatever I have written is about my total personal experience, either with Kalyan Singh or Mayawati.
But when I think as a reporter of Kalyan Singh, the history books will say Kalyan Singh and then they'll say Babri Masjid demolition, right? I want you to talk about that time. There have been so many theories.
Yeah, so,
Narasimha Rao looked the other way.
Yeah.
Was there a pact between Kalyan Singh and Narasimha Rao, a BJP leader and a Congress leader?
I wouldn't know what was behind. I can tell you what was in front. Okay. On the day, 6th of December, it was a holiday. But my job was to go to his residence every day in the morning to brief him about the media coverage on the previous day. On this particular day, when I walk into his room, he's sitting alone. Usually he never sat alone. Because everyone was in Ayodhya, sitting there, a bit forlorn, a bit upset. And then we were generally chatting, and then on telephone he got news that the dome has come down. He was so upset. He immediately called Mr. Advani. And he let it out.
Really?
He let it out.
You witnessed that?
I saw it with my own eyes and I heard it.
What did he say?
He said, आप सब लोगों को मैंने मना किया था कि लोगों को इकट्ठा ना कीजिए, लेकिन आपने मेरी बात नहीं मानी. These are his words. And then he spoke to Bhairav Singh Shekhawat. That was a much longer chat. Because Bhairav Singh Shekhawat was the Chief Minister of Rajasthan. Same words he said, कि आप लोग मेरी बात तो मानते ही नहीं थे. मैं इसका समाधान निकाल रहा था, आपको मेरी बात सुननी चाहिए थी. And I know something about the Samadhan he was taking out. I don't know much.
What was the
He was
Samadhan?
trying to engage with various groups, minority groups. And his solution was something which finally Supreme Court gave the solution.
That is what you have argued, that what Kalyan Singh was trying to do as UP Chief Minister, eventually Supreme Court ka faisla kuch aisa hi nikla.
Yes, yes. So why? Now I try and analyze, I reflect on.
Yeah.
If I were in his place, probably I would also think that way, because I have become a Chief Minister of a state. And I know if this comes down, I'll lose my Chief Ministership.
Right.
Why would he do that? People argue, no. He was under enormous pressure. Kalyan Singh was under enormous pressure. Now, as an outsider, I can say he should have done this, he should have done that, he should have deployed more force, this, that and everything. Very easy to say. Maybe he should have. But the fact, what I heard and saw was this, that he was extremely upset at that. And then he says, Anil, एक पेपर लाओ. मैं पेपर ले आया. उन्होंने उस पर लिखना शुरू किया कि ये जो कुछ भी हुआ है इसका पूर्ण उत्तरदायित्व मैं लेता हूं किसी अन्य को. Later on, I'm told it was typed and sent. But he said that. So I was comparing this with Dr. Manmohan Singh. No?
The fact that Dr. Manmohan Singh did not take ownership,
yes.
but Kalyan Singh
That's
did.
leadership. That's leadership for me. That's leadership for me. A leader has to take the responsibility. Leader has to give credit to others. But if you don't communicate, if you don't speak, imagine in PNG, I'm digressing a bit since you talk about Manmohan Singh. There was
PMG is the Project
Monitoring Group
Yes.
when I was in the Cabinet Secretariat.
When Manmohan Singh was Prime
Minister. Sorry,
Yes.
I should have said that. Now, we were getting clearances, but one minister, Environment Forest Minister, she was sitting on files worth 54,000 crores. And this is symbolic of how that government
You're
was
talking about Jaitley Natraj.
Yes. So I sent a note to Cabinet Secretary that this is happening and this will be another scam. Those were the days of scams. Nothing happened. 15 days down the line, I sent another note. Nothing happened. Then I sent the third note to the Cabinet Secretary. Please inform the Prime Minister that someone has to speak to her. I have sorted it out bureaucratically, but if she doesn't sign the file, how it can go? Then the Cabinet Secretary rings me up and tells me, Montek wants to talk to you. Montek Singh Ahluwalia at that point in time was Deputy Chairman Planning Commission. So I went over to meet him. When I entered his room, Montek said, Anil Swarup ji, you are doing a wonderful job. I said, sir, I'm very disappointed. I want to go back to the state. Achha. He said, why? I said, Minister of the government is sitting on files. I feel helpless. She is not doing it. Then he asked me, have you spoken to the Prime Minister? I said, I have no access to him. Okay, I'll talk to him. Meeting ends. In the evening, the Cabinet Secretary speaks to me. He says, तुमने Montek से क्या कह दिया? हमने कहा सब कह दिया जो आपको बताया था. सब कह दिया मैंने कहा. बोले तभी Prime Minister का फोन आया था मेरे पास. वो कह रहे थे, why is Anil upset? Then I asked him, I hope you've told him everything. He didn't answer. Nothing happened. Hey, look at the next day, Principal Secretary to the Prime Minister rings me up and asks me, Anil, why are you so upset? What is happening? So I told him, sir, this is happening. This will be another scam. Bole, can you send me the details? So I told him, I'll send you in 10 minutes. How can you send it in 10 minutes? I said, everything is on the portal. I'll have to download it. It's everything on the portal. I said, that's the problem. If it gets in public domain, there is a problem. So he said, bhejo, maine bhej diya, kuch nahi hua. This is how that government functioned. Then what happens? How did it happen? I had gone to a conference, Mr. Oscar Fernandez, late Mr. Oscar Fernandez, who I had worked with, very good relationship. He was also invited. He was nobody then. So we, as is my wont, I had arrived earlier. He also came earlier. So we were chatting. I told him, sir, I hope you are aware that this madam is taking money in the name of other madam. I told him this.
In so many words?
Yes, I have written it in my book. So he smiled and he said, Suna to maine bhi hai. I said, sir, then isn't it your duty to tell madam? And I jokingly told him, sir, if the money is reaching her, it's fine. If the money is being taken in her name and not reaching her, then it's a tragedy. 7 days down the line, Jaitley
Just for the context of our audience, before you come to what happened 7 days, you're saying to Oscar Fernandez, tell Sonia Gandhi that Jayanti Natarajan and her colleague, in your estimation, are basically taking bribes for clearing funds.
I didn't use the word bribe. I
am summarizing in colloquial. What were you implying in this?
Yes, obviously she was, the word around was Jayanti tax. Everyone
talked about. The Prime Minister himself used.
Sorry?
Which the present Prime Minister, then opposition leader, used in a speech.
So, 7 days down the line, she was shown the door. She was removed from the cabinet, if you recall, Jayanti Natarajan. So, I gave this illustration to show to you that at that point in time, there was so much indecision. It's not that they didn't want, but they were not. So many things were happening. The Prime Minister should have taken action against those ministers.
Yeah.
But he sat helplessly.
What has been your toughest phase as a bureaucrat?
My toughest phase as a bureaucrat was the first 3 months as Coal Secretary.
Because you're coming right after the alleged scam is all over the place and you have to oversee the auctions.
Yes, and the pressure was enormous. The time was so little. Supreme Court took 7 months to write a judgment. I had to do auction in 5 months. It was shocker, absolutely. But the good thing was, the scene was so bad that it couldn't become worse. So I thought anything that will happen, I can walk away with that credit. One
of the things that you've said in an earlier interview to me, but also elsewhere, is that the mafia in the education sector is more lethal than the mafia in the coal mining sector.
Certainly. When I was posted as Coal Secretary, I rang up a friend of mine and asked him, kaisa hai sector? He said, gangs of Wasepur dekhi hai kya? So when I got shifted from coal to education, I thought I was going from dark dungeons of coal mines to the bright lights of school education. And to my utmost horror, I found that the mafias of school education were much worse because, in coal, mining was underground, mafias were overground. Yeah. In education, all the mafias are underground. They are not seen. White collar.
Why are they so entrenched?
They're so entrenched.
आप राजस्थान देखिए अभी, जहाँ पे पेपर लीक के बारे में अब legislation is proposing life imprisonment and so on.
Not needed. See, I'll tell you again. I'll digress a bit because this is a very important issue.
Yes.
We all believe by catching criminals and sending behind the bars, we'll stop it. That is a very small way of doing it. Build systems. We don't build systems. Why hasn't anything happened by way of coal scam or something after 2014? Because we put in place an auction system that cannot be misused. Build systems. Why was health insurance scheme that was done for 3 years, RSBY, revived as Ayushman Bharat? Because we build systems there. It's systems. We talk about corruption, we talk about people sending people to jail. We don't talk about system. Today we have technology to do that. Why should we use that technology? We don't use that because much of the corruption is an account of opacity of processes. Make them totally transparent. No matter how corrupt and inefficient I am, to the public I'd like appear to be honest and efficient. Technology allows you to make me transparent. Process is transparent. When I used to talk to Mr. Modi about this, he used to agree with me. The question is who follows it. Yeah. That's not my job.
What are the vested interests or who are the vested interests that are controlling the education mafia?
There are 4 or 5 sets of mafias and there are different sets of mafias not related to each other. The biggest mafia that I write is the mafia of B.Ed and D.El.Ed colleges. There are 16,000 colleges, 4,000 do not exist or exist in a room and they can give you a degree. Now, I'm glad that the National Education Policy attempts to take care of this problem. That is problem number 1, the biggest mafia. And they're so deeply entrenched. The chairman, National Council for Teacher Education, had to resign because these guys went to court and courts issued orders against him, and he in disgust resigned. So it's a very tough mafia. The second mafia is the mafia of publishers.
The textbook publishers.
Yes. And I have written how much money the government used to lose at that point in time because they saw to it that the NCERT books came late and hence their books could be sold. That's the second biggest mafia. Well, all the publishers came to meet me. What are you saying?
Well, explain this. You mean what we used to call kunjis?
Not kunjis, books, textbooks. You know, NCERT books are 1/3 or 1/4 the cost of the other books that are sold in the market.
I see.
So if NCERT delays its publication and books don't come on time, then people will buy these books from the publishers.
I see.
And the difference which I had calculated roughly was 3,000 crores per annum.
So it means that NCERT is being incentivized. Somebody in NCERT was being incentivized to not publish.
I examined at length. NCERT was not being incentivized. There were inefficiencies there, which in that particular year we corrected it. That year we got the books on time, and I was under enormous pressure because these guys were losing because they had got their books printed in the hope that NCERT will get delayed. NCERT brought those books and they couldn't sell the books. So it has to be done through a system again. So this was second mafia. The third mafia is the Nakal mafia. Shocking. I remember when I was sub-divisional magistrate, my driver told me, sir, आपको आज एक नज़ारा दिखाते हैं. So I didn't know what he was saying. ले गया सुबह मुझे. वहाँ मैं पहुँचा. As soon as my jeep arrived at that center where examination was going, people started jumping out of the windows and going out. I couldn't believe what's going on. He told me, sir, ये नकल कराने आए थे, अब आपकी गाड़ी आई तो भाग रहे हैं. And it is a racket. Now Kalyan Singh in his first stint tried to do it. Yogi Adityanath has done it now. As a consequence of which, believe me, I'm talking of 2018 when he did it for the first time. 10 lakh students did not appear because they thought that they could not
cheat.
Maro nakal. So it's another mafia because they are auctioned out those centers. And wahan nakal karte. Imagine what sort of students we get.
How much has changed?
I think UP in that sense has changed quite.
And Bihar, I guess, remains a problem state?
I don't know so much about Bihar now because I left about 5 years ago. But UP changed in 2018.
You, as a civil servant, have also written recently about your concern that institutions are not as autonomous as they were actually set up to be. So you've spoken about the judiciary, you've spoken about the election commission. Talk a little bit about that. I think on your Twitter feed, you said, if things had gone according to plan, Ashok Lavasa would have been in election commission. You've spoken about, Justice Ranjan Gogoi ending up becoming a member of parliament. This has not happened only now. Earlier, MS Gill, who was the chief election commissioner, became a minister in the UPA government. So ये नई बात तो नहीं है.
नई बात, institutionalization of destruction of institutions. Let's put it this way. It is happening in a manner, MS Gill was a bad case in the sense that he should not have joined politics. In my personal view, anyone holding constitutional post should not take any assignment, let alone join politics. They should not. See, that was a wrong. But you can't justify the current wrong by saying that it had wronged earlier. But the current wrong is even worse. Look at this Justice Gogoi's case. Here is a gentleman who holds a press conference against the sitting Supreme Court judge. You and I would be behind the bars if he did that. He didn't. He becomes the Chief Justice himself. Then there is a sexual harassment case against him. How can there be a compromise in a sexual harassment case? If the lady is telling a lie, she should be behind the bars. If she is correct, then I should be behind the bars. See, there can't be a compromise in a sexual harassment case. One of them had to be wrong. It was compromise. Then lo and behold, after he retires, becomes MP. Look at the context in which he was operating. He was operating in the context of some very critical decisions of the court. He gave those decisions, he gets rewarded. There's another judge who becomes governor. Your Supreme Court justice becomes a governor. So what is this happening? There is an attempt to influence which is very visible. Look at Election Commission. What happens in Election Commission? Election Commission is a body which we all admired. Days of session and thereafter also. Despite Mr. MS Gill, no one pointed a finger on their bias. Now what is happening? Ashok Lavasa's case is a classic case of family being harassed so that he could conveniently be moved out because he would have become Chief Election Commissioner. These things are not good for institutions, whether this institutions or other institutions.
And my question only is that as someone who has seen politics over the decades, didn't this always happen? I ask this cynically because I look back at the judiciary and the emergency during Indira Gandhi.
Yes, that was
completely the darkest half of the judiciary.
I totally agree with you because if you compare with the emergency, then it's the same. But is that the right comment?
No, I'm just giving the most obvious example.
So there have been such cases.
There have been judges who've been impeached in Parliament. There have been, I could give other examples.
But if you look at the context now and the way it is happening, Election Commission. It's not that you mentioned about MS Gill's case. That was also a case he joined and became a minister.
Yes.
Very unfortunate. But if that sustains over a period of time, and if there is a general belief, which appears to be the belief, that if you don't do the bidding, then you could be in trouble. So then the institutions decay. Election Commission was one institution which we were really proud of. Even now, some of the commissioners, I know one of them, an absolutely gem, fantastic officer. He's there. It's not that they're not there. But if the general impression is that if you don't do the bidding, there could be trouble for you, it impacts the decision-making process. So my view is, and I have again written about it, that a civil servant, first of all, should not apply for a job. There should be an independent institution like UPSC to provide a panel so that the civil servant is not beholden to a politician for occupying that position. If that be the case, then things will change. So you can have that institution which recommends that out of these three, you select anybody, whoever you want to. But even then, if you pick up on families to harass somebody, which is not done.
I have to ask you in the end about the lateral entry debate. What do you feel about it as a bureaucrat?
I'm personally not against lateral entry. If it is there, so be it. But there has to be a system through which they come. It can't be that I like this person. Like if they are coming through UPSC, which in the last instance it was so, which is very fair. Why not lateral entry? And look at it's been unnecessarily being debated. But what are we trying to solve through? I'm not against it, but let's see whether the objective is being fulfilled. The objective is to bring in expertise, lateral expertise. Again, I'm not against that. But my fundamental view of the IAS is that they should not become experts. The reason is very simple. As you go up the ladder, the only expertise that you require is managing men and women, not your expertise in a particular area. It doesn't work at all. Yeah. As Secretary Coal, I didn't have to do much with coal. I had to get things done. So the job of the top leader is to create an environment where people can perform, not do it himself. And hence, by talking of expertise, take for example, what expert should finance secretary be? Budget, insurance. I mean, there's so many areas where you can be expert. You don't have to necessarily be that. Look at the present RBI governor. I mean, people have all sorts of opinion about him. But as being an IAS officer, he's able to carry people along with him. That's what you learn as you go along.
Period of peace between the government and the RBI after.
No, that of course is a different issue. But what I'm trying to say here is, even in the private sector, the top-notch positions, ask what Ratan Tata does. Does he do engineering? Yeah. Ask Indra Nooyi what she's doing, any specialization. Ask any CEO of the private sector, what is he doing? He's managing men and women. That's the expertise that you should develop. If I try to develop some expertise, I'll compete with some other expert, which I will never be able to do.
Yeah.
I believe in that we should not unnecessarily go in for expertise. You should have domain knowledge, which you can acquire. But expertise is something you can't acquire at that stage, and why should you acquire?
Yeah. So finally, the very sweet nugget in your book is about the first use of a photocopy machine, which I was really stuck by in the early 90s. Just look at how swiftly technology has changed. In 1991, the photocopy machine use होती थी, तो files manually लिखी जाती थी. I just had to share that story. I just have to ask you, what is your proudest moment as a bureaucrat? I've asked you your most difficult one. Let me ask you your proudest moment.
My proudest moment was...
Almost fulfilling.
No, I'll tell you. My proudest moment was, and I'll take a minute just to explain. When Mr. Obama took over as the president of the US, one of his advisors rang me up. He said that, why can't you come and make a presentation to us on your health insurance scheme? They were having problems. I said, our context is very different. What will I do? He insisted. So in one of my visits to Washington, where I had to go to the World Bank, I went to Brookings Institute, where I made this presentation, where the advisors were there, government officers were there, and there were also people from Gates and Bill Gates and Melinda Gates, Bill Gates and Rockefeller Foundation and others. So after this presentation, as I was sipping a cup of tea, this guy from Gates Foundation walks up to me and asks me, Mr. Swarup, you seem to be very passionate about this health insurance scheme. What does the government give you beyond your salary?
Yes.
So I said, well, what do you get? You help a number of people and you give millions of dollars to poor countries. What do you get out of it? He said, but that's a job. But more than that, we derive a lot of satisfaction out of the good, of the help that we give to the poor people. I said, you answered your own question. The RSBY is meant for the poorest of the poor. many of whom would have been dead but for this scheme. So the good wishes of those that survived and the families come back to me somehow, anyhow. That's good enough a kick for me to do what I'm doing. Then I narrated an incident, which probably is my Bharat Ratna moment. I explained to him that I used to visit these small hospitals which were empaneled. In one of those visits, I was talking to a beneficiary patient. I suddenly heard a very feeble voice from behind. With that guy, it was a conversation in English, but I'll tell you what the conversation was. As I turned back, I saw a very old lady who would not sit, was calling me, waving that smart card. Beta idhar aao. Someone had told her that I had something to do with that scheme. I went to her and I bent down and asked her, Mata ji, aap theek to hain? She tells me, beta, मैं बहुत तकलीफ में हूँ, लेकिन इन अस्पताल वालों ने मेरा बड़ा ख्याल रखा है. Then I said, माता जी, फिर तो आप ठीक हो जाएंगे, अपने घर जाएंगी. She said, मेरा कोई घरवाला नहीं है, मैं तो भीख मांगती थी. अब तो मेरी उम्र इतनी हो गई, अब मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊंगी. I said, नहीं नहीं, आप ठीक हो जाएंगी. It's carried on 15 seconds. And then she made a remarkable statement. She tells me, ऊपर वाले से जाके एक बात जरूर कहूंगी, तुम्हारी स्कीम बहुत अच्छी है. I call it my Bharat.
Lovely.
That was the best moment of my life. And I have got many such Bharat Ratnas in my career.
That's a wonderful story to end this conversation on. Anil Swarup, we look forward to your next book, which is all about your encounters with politicians and chief ministers. It makes for a fascinating read. I've had a preview access, but I hope many listeners and watchers of this podcast are able to also read it soon as the book makes its way into the market. Thank you so much for talking.
Thank you.